به تو از دور سلام به سلیمان جهان از طرف دور سلام.
السلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين أبي القاسم محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. أما بعد، فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى وقوله الحق وهو أصدق القائلين: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية فادخلي في عبادي وادخلي جنتي. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. This is the third lecture in this series of majalis, in which we are commemorating the shahadat of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Imam Hussain ibn Ali alayhi wassalatu wassalam, along with his companions who gave their lives for the sake of the religion of Islam. We began our discussion yesterday by explaining the topic of the discussion, and we went in the details of explaining as to the topic is lessons from Ashura. I chose this ayat, or these four ayat rather, from chapter number 89 from the Holy Quran, known as Wal Fajr. And in these in this chapter especially, because the beginning part of the chapter talks about the Layalin Ashr, which one of the interpretation, as we mentioned last night, is the month of Muharram al-Haram, the first 10 nights. If I can just recap as to what was discussed last night so that I can continue from where we left off. We had mentioned very briefly in tafsir of this ayah that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explains things in bits and pieces. The reason behind the ayat to be broken down in a small ayat is for the sake of mankind to ponder and think about it, so that you don't just continuously read over these ayat without paying any heed to them. Because on numerous occasions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks this question from us, that أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ فِي الْقُرْآنِ, do they not do tadabbur and contemplate and ponder over this Quran, or their hearts are sealed up? So in order for us to contemplate, in order for us to think, it has to be in bits and pieces. It has to be small, ayat, in order for us to go ahead and comprehend in its entirety. I remember last night when we began, we talked about the concept of the tafsir and the tatbiq, the interpretation and the implementation of the ayat of Quran. And we gave a few examples in this reference as to how there's an apparent meaning and then there's an implied meaning as far as the ayat are concerned. So you can't just look at the ayat of Quran and when you see the apparent meaning of it, don't look into the inner depth and the analysis of it. And give an example that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ, that means say that Allah is one. He's asking you to also think about the mafhum of this ayah, which is say that Allah is not two or more than two. So that concept has to be established. Now, this was a very basic example, but when these ayat are challenging us and these ayat are sometimes ambiguous to us, especially when we run into the mutashabihat, then this concept and this law of mantuq and mafhum of ayat really plays a very vital role. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this ayah, He begins by saying, oh, the serene soul, nafs mutma'inna. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not say, ya ayyatuhal jismul mutma'inna, because jism is this body of ours, is not in need of the satisfaction. Now, although I'm not saying or hinting the fact that, we should not take care of our bodies. No, we should. These are all amanat from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This body of ours that He has given to us is a trust from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But with that said, we must make sure that we are not glued to the satisfaction and the beautification of this body of ours. In fact, we should be focused on satisfaction and the beautification rather of our nafs, because that is something which will be held accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So while Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyatuhal nafsul mutma'inna, He's talking about the serene soul which is to be satisfied. Now, who amongst us does not want a satisfactory soul? I'll get into more details of this in the nights to come, because of there are two different things that I don't want to skip. One is sticking with the topic, and second, the tabyin and the explanation of the ayat. So inshallah, every day we'll do a little bit of tafsir of this ayat, and inshallah we'll get to our topic as well. That the concept of, taking care of your body is important. Make sure that you have a good diet. Make sure that you have a good hygiene. Make sure that you eat healthy food, and so that you're able to keep your body in check. But more importantly, it's that our soul is something which is kept in check, and that's why the itminan of nafs is something which is highly, highly recommended. Now, this is this nafs where we find that everyone in the world is looking for what? Satisfaction of the heart. Who amongst us does not want satisfaction of the heart or the soul? This concept of nafs itself is a very ambiguous concept for many of us, and has to be explained and translated. Inshallah, as I mentioned, I promise that I will get to all of those words that are mentioned in this ayat. For example, the word nafs, the word mutma'inna, the word radiya, mardiya, the word ibad, and the word jannah. All of these are important for us to keep a check and keep an eye, and to be able to understand in order to fully comprehend. Now, as I continue asking this question, who amongst us does not want a satisfied soul? We're all looking for the satisfaction so that we have this ultimate satisfaction. Now, some people will have satisfaction in certain things that are associated with this world. The more you try to find satisfaction in this world, the more you're going to lose, because this world is a temporary abode. This world is temporarily here, and anything that you find in it will also be of temporary nature. When something which is temporary in its nature, it ceases to expire. So therefore, when you find satisfaction in this world, in this life, let it be known that it will have an expiry date, and it will run out one day. So therefore, don't cling on to it, hold on to it for too long. Therefore, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, you're the one who's telling us, oh, the serene soul. Now, some of the ayat of Quran do the tafsir of other ayat of Quran. How do we gain this serene soul? How do we access this satisfied soul which is at peace? Well, you refer to other ayat of Quran. In other place in Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ala bidhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub. That indeed with the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hearts find itminan. They are at rest. They find tranquility. So this is some of the ayat do the tafsir of other ayat. I say, well, Allah, can you further explain to us? What do you mean dhikr? How do we perform your dhikr? Another ayat of Quran further explains it by saying that aqim as-salata li dhikri. Establish the prayer so that you may do my dhikr. So understand that the salat is holding the key to the satisfaction of our hearts. And I will remain content with this much. If you remember last night, we began explaining the topic, the lessons from Ashura. And we talked about what is lesson and what is a message. And we went about the explanation of that. And then the first few lessons that we can learn from Ashura is in belief, in our aqaid. And so we were talking about the concept that as to how when we talk about the messages from Ashura, it isn't limited to the sayings of Imam and the companions and their actions only. It is much more than that, and it is beyond that. But the majority of the lessons will be derived from the words of Sayyid al-Shuhada. For example, this concept of being free is derived from the kalam of Sayyid al-Shuhada. He says, "In lam yakun lakum dinun, wa kuntum la takhafun al-ma'ad, fakunu ahraran fi dunyakum." If you do not fear or if you do not have a deen, and you do not fear the hereafter, now referring to your aqaid, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ, at least be free in this world. It is mentioned that Imam Hussain uttered these words, especially at the time when he was fighting and he was left all alone. And while he was busy fighting in the battlefield, he saw that these men of Umar Saad, they sneak up on the tents and the khiyam Hussaini, where the women were, where the children were. Imam turns around and he says, "In lam yakun lakum dinun, wala takhafun al-ma'ad." If you don't have any deen, and if you don't fear, the hereafter, at least be free. You call yourselves to be Arabs. Live up to your expectation. So what do you want, O Hussein? Shimr said this. Imam said, as long as I'm alive, do not bother my family members. So here we understand that how a lot of time when people are going about their lives, they don't feel any tensions, there isn't anything bothering them, there isn't anything which is hurtful, then everything is good. The moment person is persecuted, the moment someone is put into some sort of difficulty, and there's turmoil, and there's he's surrounded by a lot of difficulties, and there isn't any ease, and there's adversity that is facing, right away we see the reality of this insan. Now I'm sitting in front of you, all of you who are listening right now, nothing is bothering me. I'm able to freely speak. And the moment, for example, if I'm unable to breathe, and if I start coughing and I'm unable to talk, at that moment you'll start seeing the face complexion change. Similarly, right now my life is okay. Before this pandemic, none of us were going through much difficulty. But the moment the pandemic hit us, many of us are now struggling. Many of us are having trouble making ends meet. Someone may have been laid off from their work. Someone may not have, means to survive. They're asking for help. And this is where the difficulty comes about. Now, to be able to remain steadfast at the time of adversity is kamal. Everybody can survive in the time of ease. But the real hunar and skill is to be able to survive when you're facing adversity. And that's why the ayat of Quran says that alladhina, those who show patience fi sarra'i wal dharra wal kadhimin al ghayz wal afina 'anil nas wallahu yuhibbul muhsinin. That these are the people who show patience and who show steadfastness regardless of the fact that they're going through ease or they're going through difficulty. The moment we are put into some sort of difficulty, the real us comes out. The real me will come out, and you'll be able to see, oh, this is what this person is made of. That's why Mawlana Muttaqiyan has said that if you want to test someone, travel with them. Go on a trip with them. Why? Because when you travel with someone, you're out of your comfort zone. And when you're out of your comfort zone, at that moment, really, it's the person's good or bad comes out. Now, because not everything that you need is accessible, not everything is in front of you, you're away from your home, away from your house, away from your hometown. If a difficulty strikes you, how do you cope with that difficulty? That's why another kalam of Sayyid al-Shuhada, he says, An-nasu abidu dunya wad-dinu laiqun ala al-sinatihim. He says, people are the servants of the world. Abid, he didn't use the word abd, even lower than abd. Abidud dunya wad-dinu laiqun ala al-sinatihim. Let's just hope we are not amongst these. Imam is seeing the people, and this is what he's saying about them. The people are slaves of this world. That's a better translation. They are slaves of this world, and religion, deen ilahi, laiqun ala al-sitihim. Just the utterance of their tongue. something which is just they utter from their tongues. يَحُوتُونَهُمَا دَرَّتْ مَعَايِشَهُمْ فَإِذَا مُحِسُّ بِالْبَلَاءِ قَلَّتْ دَيَّانُونَ. The deen is just, something of an utterance from their tongue. As long as, their life is taken care of, things are going well, they'll go around it. فَإِذَا مُحِسُّ بِالْبَلَاءِ. But the moment they face bala and difficulty, what happens? قَلَّتْ دَيَّانُونَ. You'll find very few of them to be dayyanun. Very few of them to be steadfast in deen. These are straightforward messages from Imam. But we also learn from Ashura that even with the small numbers, one shouldn't bow down to injustice. Although this isn't among the sayings of Imam, but we learned it. That in studying Ashura, instead of focusing on how it happened, we should delve into why it happened. I'll explain that. How it happened will explain the graphic nature of Ashura. How Abu Abdullah was, killed and he was, martyred. How other family members were killed without any mercy. How their heads were severed. How their bodies were trampled. All of these things, which are more sentimental and emotional, which is needed. You need people to be emotional and sentimental, because the moment a person is sentimental and emotional, only then their hearts are what? Ready to accept the truth. But if a person is stern-hearted, then they will not pay heed to your kalam or the pearls of wisdom from Ma'sumin. So you need to mold their hearts. You need to make sure that you tell them stuff which brings what? Tears to their eyes, and they're emotional, they're sentimental, and then go ahead and give the message of Ashura to them. So while you explain the graphic nature of the event, to bring their emotions out, at that moment, tell them why it happened. Not so much how it happened, why it happened. Why it happened will guide us to the messages and the points that we find in the kalam of Sayyid al-Shuhada. So the first thing that we want to begin with tonight is Tawheed in belief and action that we find in the kalam of Sayyid al-Shuhada, in his steadfastness. And I'll prove it to you how Tawheed could be learned just by the actions of Imam Hussain. He's not there to give a lecture on Tawheed, but you can still find Tawheed in the character, in the behavior of Imam Hussain in Karbala. Belief on Tawheed, just a background of it, is not only in the mind of the Muwahhid, rather it shadows every aspect of his life. Belief that God is right and speaks the truth, fulfills his promises. His obedience is wajib upon us. His displeasure can lead us to hellfire. Because God is what? He's always present. He does not sleep, nor does he doze off. La ta'khudhuhu sinatun wa la nawm. And he's always watching over us. Alam ya'lam bi anna Allah yara. The smallest of our actions are not hidden from him. He sees everything. When all of these beliefs come out as certainty for us, it will serve as the most important element in our lives. Do you believe in one God, the one who will be responsible for giving us jaza or saza? He sees everything. He does not sleep nor doze off. Nothing can be hidden from him. Everything is in his perspective. That's why so many ayat of Quran that talk about hisab, kitab, in the hereafter. They said, what is wrong with this book? La yughadiru saghiratan wala kabira. What is up with this book? Namai amal, this book of action that will be given to us tomorrow. We will say this. What's up with this book? It did not leave out any small or big actions. Everything is mentioned in it. Everything is part of this book. We find in the kalam in the life of the Holy Prophet, a person came. He came and he asked, "Oh Prophet, teach me Quran. Teach me what you know." Prophet asked one of his companions, he said, "Take him and teach him Quran." As our Qari was reciting beautifully, this is an art to learn and to be able to recite Quran. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Make sure that you recite Quran beautifully. So this man was sent with one of the companions of the Holy Prophet to learn Quran. While this companion was teaching him Quran, he started by reciting the Surah Zilzal. And he recited the last two ayat. فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. That whoever does an atom worth of good will see it, and whoever does an atom worth of evil will see it. This man, he heard this ayat. He said to the companion of the Holy Prophet, "That's it, no more." And he left. This companion was puzzled. He came back to the Holy Prophet and he said, Prophet said, "What happened?" He said, "The man you sent me to teach him Quran, I only taught him Surah Zilzal. We read these ayat, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرٍ يَرَهُ. Whoever does an atom worth of good deed will see it. وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرٍّ يَرَهُ. Whoever does an atom worth of evil will see it." Right away, this man said, "That is enough," and he left. Prophet said, "Raja'a faqihan." Don't worry about him. He returned as a faqih, a knowledgeable person. Because he realized in those two ayat, the summary of the entire Quran, that Allah is watching over us. He sees everything and nothing is hidden from him. That itself should be the biggest hope for you and biggest encouragement for you to be able to believe in that God of yours. So the meaning of Tawheed, is not only in our minds, in theory. Rather, another dimension is in the form of our actions, which is Tawheed in ita'at and Tawheed in ibadat. And I want to connect this with the kalam of Sayyid al-Shuhada. That Imam Hussain knew about his shahadat, did he not? Did Prophet not tell him about his shahadat? I don't know if I mentioned here or not. Pardon me if I repeat things, because I'm reciting majlis at another place and it is possible that some of the stuff may be repeated, which I may have said over there, I might repeat over here, or vice versa. And I don't know if I had said this already, but nonetheless, that, that the Holy Prophet had told him about it, or he knew about it. Remember that incident of the Holy Prophet, which is mentioned in Majma'ul Zawaid, and as well as Mustadrak as-Sahihain by Hakim Nishapuri. That Holy Prophet, he was playing with Imam Hussain, while Imam Hussain was a very young child. He was only 5 or 6 years old. At the time of the wafat of the Holy Prophet, Imam Hussein's age is only 6 or 7 maybe maximum. So Imam Hussain is a young child. Prophet is playing with his grandson, and then he starts crying. And then he explains to the ladies who were in the house that the reason I'm crying is because Jibreel came and told me that your grandson will be martyred in the plains of Karbala. And he showed me the plains of Karbala, and he gave me the sand from the plains of Karbala. So Imam Hussain knew about it. That whole tradition where mother of Janab Hussain, Janab Fatmatul Zahra Salamullah Alayha, she says, "Oh my father, when my son will be killed, will I be there?" Prophet said, "No, you won't be there with him." She then said, "Will you be there?" Prophet said, "No, I won't be there either." So will Ali be there? He said, "No, Ali would have already been martyred." He said, "Well, definitely his son, his brother Hassan will be there." Rasulullah said, "No, even Imam Hassan will not be there." Then Bibi Fatmatul Zahra Salamullah Alayha, she said, "Then who will be there to accompany my son and to weep over him. So this whole incident is already mentioned. Do you think Imam Hussain does not know about his shahadat? And when he's about to leave Medina, he comes and visits his grandmother, Hazrat Salma. She was alive at that time. And she says, "Oh Hussain, don't go to Karbala. Go anywhere you want to, but don't go to Karbala." He said, "Why?" He said, "Because your grandfather had given me this bottle with some sand in it. And he said, when the sand turns into red and blood, know that Hussain has been killed. The sand is from Karbala." So Imam Hussain knows about his shahadat before. He knew the smallest details of how he will be killed. Prophet had continuously mentioned it. It was not a hidden knowledge to him. Knowing about something and then still moving towards it. Now, unfortunately, some people translated this as, wrongfully translated this. I won't even use the word. But this is where we understand this knowledge not only did not slow Imam Hussain down, rather it increased his thirst for shahadat. Because these are the words of Imam Hussain. He says, "Taraktul khalqa turran fi hawaka wa aitamtul ayala likay araka." He said, "Taraktul khalqa." I left all of mankind, turran fi hawaka, for the sake of your, for your sake and for your desires. Aitamtul ayala, I made my children, my family orphan, likay araka, so that I may see you. He's speaking to Allah. This is total submission, brothers and sisters. This is not, walking into a brick wall, doing something without proper knowledge. No, Imam Hussain sent his ambassador, Muslim ibn Aqil. He still knew what will happen to him, because that is the decree of Allah that he has shown complete submission to. But still, if he knows of the dangers, why is he going there? Well, the reason is because that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to do. That's what has been decreed for him. That is the level of total submission, maqam at-taslim wal-rida. One of the signs of muttaqeen, which Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam al-Muttaqeen, Ali ibn Abi Talib ﷺ mentions in Khutbah Muttaqeen of Nahj al-Balagha in number 193, is that they are always satisfied with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mullah Ahmad al-Naraqi, in his book Miraj al-Sa'ada, he says, "Ziddu sakhat is rida." Zidd sakhat, or sakhat with khat and ta, reza. Being satisfied is the opposite of resentment and displeasure, which means not complaining or criticizing for the decree, about the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not complaining, "Oh Allah, why me?" Not complaining, "Oh Allah, why should I have to go? Why can't someone else go?" Have we ever done that? If we are struck with some sort of difficulty, do we go ahead and say, "Oh Allah, why me? Why not someone else? Why this happened to me? Why not to someone else?" So we see that we're not at that level of maqam at-taslim wa rida. Imam Hussain is. And therefore he's not criticizing. He's not complaining, not from inside, not from outside, not batinan, not zahiran. He also mentions in the same book about rida, that in front of the decree of Allah, it is the highest position in deen, most honorable and the greatest door to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are different doors to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's different maqamat that ulama irfan or tasawwuf have mentioned. In falsafa, you read maqam at-taslim and maqam al-rida are at the highest and the peak of maqamat. No, there are certain other maqamat, but this is up there. So this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, radiyallahu anhum wa radu anhu. Irji'i ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyya. And that's the same concept of being radi with the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and being satisfied with the with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has declared for you. Allah is pleased with them, and they are well pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It was asked from our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam, بِأَيِّ شَيْءٍ يُعْلَمُ الْمُؤْمِنُ بِأَنَّهُ مُؤْمِنٌ. What is it that tells a mu'min that he's a mu'min? What is it that you and I can gauge and measure our iman with? What tells us we are mu'min? Imam responded, قال بالتسليم لله والرضا فيما ورد عليه من سرور أو سخط. With total submission in the commands of Allah and being pleased with whatever comes upon them from pleasure and resentment. That is one way of gauging and understanding if you are what? If you are, mu'min or not. So here I want to share with you a very beautiful tradition as we have started and dived, completely immersed ourselves into the lessons of Karbala, and the first lesson about Tawheed, and with Tawheed accompanying this Maqam al-Taslim and the Maqam of Rada. The book of Musakkan al-Fu'ad, there's a tradition that the Holy Prophet, إِذَا كَانَ يَوْمُ الْقِيَامَةِ, he said, أَنْبَتَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى لِطَائِفَةٍ مِّنْ أُمَّتِي, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grow to some people in my ummat أَجْنِحَةً فَيَطِيرُونَ مِنْ قُبُورِهِمْ إِلَى الْجِنَانِ. He will grant them wings by which they will fly from their graves towards the paradise. يَسْرَحُونَ فِيهِ وَيَتَنَعَّمُونَ كَيْفَ شَاءُوا. And they will be flying with it, will be bestowed with the bounties, ni'mat, whatever they wish. فَتَقُولُ لَهُمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. When they encounter the malaika will ask them, هَلْ رَأَيْتُمُ الْحِسَابَ. Did you go through hisab? Sort of like, imagine if you walk into a building for, I don't know, if you want to see someone, you have a meeting or something, or you have an appointment, doctor's appointment, you have to go through, for example, the paperwork, the receptionist, and then the nurse, and then you get to the doctor, right? Sort of like that. The malaika asked them, did you go through the hisab, accountability? What are you doing over here? فَيَقُولُونَ مَا رَأَيْنَا حِسَابًا. They'll respond, no, we did not go through hisab. We came directly here. فَيَقُولُونَ. Then malaika will ask them, هَلْ جُسْتُمُ الصِّرَاطِ. Did you pass over the bridge of Sirat? فَيَقُولُونَ مَا رَأَيْنَا الصِّرَاطَ. No, we did not see any Sirat. فَيَقُولُونَ هَلْ رَأَيْتُمْ جَهَنَّمْ. Did you see Jahannam? فَيَقُولُونَ مَا رَأَيْنَا شَيْئًا. Why are you bothering us? In other words, I'm paraphrasing. No, we did not see Hisab Kitab. We did not pass through Sirat, the Pul Sirat or the bridge of Sirat. We did not pass through Jahannam either. We came directly here. Sort of like if you have close relations or connections with someone, and you've come to a company to see the CEO, you hit the elevator button and then you go directly to the floor where the CEO is and you go into the office without anyone stopping you. Sort of that feeling. Or better yet, if you want to go see the president of the country, not that if you really want to see, well, you're in Canada, so maybe you do want to see the prime minister. So you can't just walk into his office. You need to make an appointment. You need to go through different security clearance before you can go see the prime minister. And similarly over here in the United States, if you want to go see and visit the White House, you'll have to go through different protocols. These people, Prophet is saying, ta'ifatun min ummati, group from my ummat, they will be given ajniha, wings by which they will fly from their qubur toward the jinan, the paradise. Malaika will question them. They'll say, no, we did not go through this place. We did not go through that place. We did not go through any of these places. فَتَقُولُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ, one of the malaika will say, مِنْ أُمَّةٍ مِنْ أَيِّ أُمَّةٍ أَنْتُمْ, which ummah do you belong to? فَيَقُولُونَ مِنْ أُمَّةِ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ, we belong to the ummah and the nation of the Holy Prophet. فَيَقُولُونَ نَشَدْنَاكُمُ اللَّهُ حَدِّثُونَا مَا كَانَتْ أَعْمَالُكُمْ فِي الدُّنْيَا. He said, okay, please tell us, speak to us, what kind of actions did you perform in this world by which you did not have to go through Hisab Kitab, you did not have to pass through the bridge of Sirat, you did not have to go through Jahannam, none of these things were faced. What kind of actions did you perform in the world that you flew directly to the paradise? فَيَقُولُونَ, and then these people will respond, خَصْلَتَانِ كَانَتَا فِينَا فَبَلَّغَنَا اللَّهُ هَذِهِ الدَّرَجَةِ. There were two specific habits that we had. Khaslat, two types of khaslat that we had, two things, two features we had, through which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us this daraja, بِفَضْلِ رَحْمَتِهِ, with the fadl of His rahmat and His mercy. فَيَقُولُونَ مَا هُمَا, what are these things? You know, these people like to build the climax, right? They won't just give the answer right away. They want to bring it all the way up to the climax. فَيَقُولُونَ, and then they respond, كُنَّا إِذَا خَلَوْنَا نَسْتَحْيِي أَن نَعْصِيَهُ. They said the first thing was, whenever we were khalawna, we were by ourselves. You know, when a person is more prone to committing sins, because when you're by yourself, it is easy for shaitan to penetrate and to be able to misguide you. But when you're amongst the people, you don't really worry about committing any sin. But when you are by yourself, this is when shaitan penetrates and misleads you, misguides you, and you perform sins. It says, إِذَا خَلَوْنَا نَسْتَحْيِي أَن نَعْصِيَهُ. When we were by ourselves, we had haya to go ahead and sin against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's one. وَنَرْضَى بِالْيَسِيرِ مِمَّا قُسِمَ لَنَا. And second thing, we were satisfied with the decree of Allah, with little that He had given to us, with the small that He had given to us, with the ease that He had given to us. مِمَّا قُسِمَ لَنَا. Whatever was our haqq, we were given by Allah, whether little or a lot, ease or difficulty, we were radi with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَتَقُولُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ حَقٌّ لَكُمْ هَذَا. If that's the case, then you do belong in this place. You know, He says, we showed modesty and chastity and privacy to not commit a sin. And second, we were content and well pleased with what God gave us. And He'll say, you deserve this exalted place. Please proceed. Please go on wherever you want to go. Now bring back in your mind what Imam Hussain is saying. Imam is saying, taraktul khalqa turran fi hawaka wa aitamtul ayala likay araka. I left the khilqat, the public, your creations, everyone, for your sake. Wa aitamtul ayala likay araka. I made my children orphan so that I may see you. This is Kamal Tawheed. This is the extent of Tawheed, and this is the extent of submission and taslim and rida from Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. That if a person is satisfied on the minimum given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will be satisfied with that person's minimum actions. If Allah has given me little, and I'm satisfied with that little, Allah will be satisfied with my little action. He will not need a great deal of actions from me. So some are against the concept of rida and claim that it is, you know, in tough times, in front of different calamities, rida has no place. Rather, in these situations, one must resort to patience and forbearance. Ulama of akhlaq countered this claim and said that this is suspicion is due to lack of love and inability to recognize the love. If love is understood, then maqam rida and satisfaction is understood, and it is actually its fruit. I'll give you a few examples to decipher this whole concept. First level, there are two levels of it. One is a smaller level, second is a deeper level of it. At the first level, the level of love is at such a high level that even if one is wound stricken, you get struck by something and you're wounded, he doesn't feel the pain. For example, a warrior who's busy in the battlefield doesn't pay attention to the wounds that he's receiving. They're fighting a war. Isn't that what was said about Amir al-Mu'mineen in that ayat of wilayat? إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. That Imam was struck by the arrow, and when an arrow pierces through your body, it pains. But when you have to pull it out, there's even further pain. Imam is praying. While he was praying, they pulled the arrow out. Imam did not feel anything. He was so drowned into witnessing the kamal and the jamal of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he did not see the pain. So for a warrior who's busy in the battlefield, who's got this aim and objective in front of him, small little wounds that he's struck by, he doesn't really care about it. We'll tend to it after it's done. Another example, a person who is running in pursuit of an important thing doesn't pay attention if a thorn pierces through his leg. For example, if I'm given a news that so-and-so has been in an accident and they've been taken into emergency room, now I'll run barefoot. If, for example, someone is saying that, look, there's a flood coming and you need to get out of your house, I'll run barefoot, leaving behind everything, because now I have to save my life. So if my foot, lands on rocks or thorns, I can care less at that moment. Why? Because there's a bigger fear in my mind, and that is a flood which is sweeping everything away. Secondly, one feels the pain when tested by an enemy. But if one's own is testing, then there is no pain whatsoever. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is testing Imam Hussain. So there's no fear, there's no pain whatsoever. Second level, this level is lower than the one before. Here the intensity of love and being lost in it, so that the person affected feels the pain but remains what? Pleased. Just like a patient who is willing to go through a pain of surgery to be what? Cured of illness. Someone says, well, you have to have a heart surgery done. We need to perform an open heart surgery. It's a very painful process. Well, of course, today with the technology, you don't feel it. You're sedated, and they open up your ribs, break them open up your chest, they operate on your heart, and then they sew everything back together, and you wrap you up, and you're good to go. I mean, you feel the pain, but not so much when it is actually being done. But still there's pain of this surgery to remove something. Why do you go through that difficulty? Because if you don't go through this difficulty, this will linger on. And if you go through this difficulty, tomorrow there's a brighter future for you. A child who's sick, you want to give him a medicine, he doesn't like the taste of the medicine. He said, it's not good, it's disgusting, I don't want to eat it, I don't want to drink it. You don't do that when you're adult. Oh, I don't want to drink this medicine because it tastes bad. You know that tasting it bad, it tastes bad, but it is what? It's there for your cure. So the one who is willing to taste the bitterness of a medicine for the love of being healthy again. Love of God is also the same for this person who might feel the pain of calamities but remains what? Is satisfied, since he knows inna ma'al usri yusra wa inna ma'al usri yusra, that indeed after hardship comes what? Comes ease. Prophet of Islam Hazrat Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, Ya ibadallahi, antum kal marda, wallahu rabbul alameen kat tabib. فصلاح المرضى فيما يعلمه الطبيب ويدبره به لا فيما يشتهيه المريض ويقترحه. He said, oh servants of Allah, you are mareed, and Allah is like tabib. You are mareed and Allah is tabib. And the salah and the betterment of the mareed lies in what the tabib knows and what he plans to cure you with, not in what the mareed wants. If the mareed says, no, 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 don't give me this, doctor. Don't give me that, doctor. I don't want this. Give me something else. If doctor listens to what the mareed wants, then he may not be able to cure him. But if doctor acts upon his knowledge and treats this patient, this is where the salah and the betterment of this mareed lies into it. I know I've run out of my time, and inshallah we'll start from the same place. That how this is the maqam of taslim and rida that you find in Imam Hussain. This is the maqam of taslim and rida that you find even in the family of Imam Hussain. That when they are all present there, you know, one of the questions that was asked by our fourth Imam, Imam Zain al-Abidin, was that your family was killed, your father was killed, your brothers were killed. Imam Zain al-Abidin responded, if it is for the sake and the decree of Allah, if it's for the pleasure of Allah, then so be it. If my father is killed for the pleasure of Allah, so be it. If my brothers are martyred for the pleasure of Allah, for securing this deen, so be it. If my aunts are paraded from a city to city, so be it. If their veils and chadars have been taken away for the sake of this deen, so be it. If my uncle Qamar Bani Hashim, Abul Fadl Abbas, his hands are chopped off, so be it. If my brother Ali Akbar, he's killed in the battlefield and a dagger is in his chest, so be it. If my 6-month-old brother who's asking for some drink of water is killed, so be it. Imam said, that's fine, because it is there for the decree and the pleasure of Allah. This is the ultimate level of maqam, of taslim and rida that we find in the kalam of Imam Hussain and in the kalam of Imam Zain al-Abidin. You know, Imam has a son by the name Abdullah al-Radi al-Asghar. And then there's a riwayat that there's a daughter of Imam by the name Ruqayya. Mother of Ruqayya is mentioned to be Ishaq, was mentioned to be the mother that after her death, you know, Imam Hussain, or, you know, after she passed away, Imam Hussein's child, this Ruqayya, was taken care. Imam married Ishaq, and through her Imam had this daughter named Ruqayya. Now there are different daughters of Imam are mentioned. In some riwayat, this daughter is mentioned as Sakina bint al-Hussein. And in some riwayat, this daughter is mentioned as Ruqayya bint al-Hussein. In the different traditions and cultures, some commemorate the shahadat of this 4-year-old daughter of Imam Hussain. You know, some mention that she was the daughter of Rubab. Some mention that the daughter of Rubab was named Sakina, who lived on. But the other daughter named Ruqayya was someone who was killed or who died in the Zindan, in the prison of Sham, where people still go and they visit her shrine. That this little girl, who's mainly maybe 4 years old at max, who sees so much pain, who asks Ammu for water. Imam asks Hazrat Abbas to go fetch some water. But when Hazrat Abbas is unable to bring water, she says, I will never ask for water again. No more water for me, I just want my Ammu back. And then when after the event of Karbala, after the day of Ashur, when the water was brought by the enemies, because at that moment bringing water does not really make any sense or make It does not have any meaning. Janab Zainab brought all the girls together and the children together, and she gave this water to Ruqayya. He said, go ahead and drink. She said, you go ahead and drink first. She said, no, you're young, and the younger ones drink first. She took this water and she started walking toward the battlefield, the Maqtal. Janab Zainab said, where are you going, oh my daughter? She said, did you not just tell me the young ones drink and quench their thirst first? I'm going to give this to my younger brother Ali Asghar, who left this world without drinking any water. And then whenever she would see her father's head raised on the spear, she would weep and she would cry. To the extent when a child of that age, that 4-year-old, would weep and cry, how do you deal with a child such an age? You deal with mercy, you deal with compassion, you deal with love. But how did Imam Hussein's daughter dealt with? She would be struck by taziana. She would be slapped on her face. She would be swept around like this with lashes, and that's how she would be treated. On this occasion, when they were going towards Sham, in the darkness of the night, she fell off her horse, and when she fell off the Amari, nobody noticed, but Imam Hussain, whose head was above the spear, it also brought itself down to the ground. When the enemies, they could not move the head of Imam Hussain, they brought Imam Zainul Abidin and Bibi Zainab. See what's wrong with Hussain, and we cannot move forward because we have to deliver the head of Hussain to Yazid. Janab Zainab says someone is missing. She goes around looking for the little girl, the daughter of Imam Hussain. She can't find her anywhere. And then she runs around as she was running on the day of Ashur, calling her name, upon which she arrives at a place. She sees an elderly woman is holding on to this little girl. She says, oh women, you have done favor to us, so please give our daughter back, because our qafila, our caravan, would not move forward. Janab Zainab takes the little girl, and as she's leaving, she says, oh woman, oh elderly woman, if you have any hajat, please tell us. I will make dua for you. I belong to the household of the Holy Prophet. That old woman removed her veil and she said, oh Zainab, you did not recognize your mother. This is Fatimatul Zahra. They continued their journey to the Zindan of Sham. This little girl and the daughter of Imam Hussain, she would see Imam Hussain in her dream, and she would weep and cry. One day Yazid, when he heard the crying, he said, why, who's crying? They said, the daughter of Hussain is crying. He said, what is she crying for? She's crying for the head of Hussain. Yazid sends the head of Imam Hussain and puts it into a tasht covered with something. When the head comes, she said, I'm not hungry. He said, this is not food. When they remove the covering, they see it reveals the head of Imam Hussain. She picks up the head of her Baba. She weeps and cries. And as she's weeping and crying, everybody starts weeping in the Zindan. Not before this little girl. She died out of this weeping and crying. ألا لعنة الله القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Oh Allah, please accept our ibadah tonight. Oh Allah, we've committed a lot of sins. Please forgive our sins. Oh Allah, give us the tawfiq and ability to follow the commands and the teachings of Masumin alayhi salatu wassalam. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance of our awaited Imam. Make us amongst the helpers and the soldiers of Imam. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.